Creating your first video?
Sorry about that, folks. We've just been trying to do a lot of technical things behind the scenes. We've managed tonight to get the stream running both on YouTube and Facebook. Can you all hear me okay? Is this working all right today? We'll be starting in about sorry, there's an advert. We'll be starting in about 20 minutes. How's the sound coming through for you all tonight? Is it all right? We are live, yeah. Can you hear me? Give me a comment if you can hear me. Excellent. Clear as a bell. Yeah, so basically, we've been tinkering around tonight, and I think we've sorted a lot of it out. Sometimes the technology does some funky things. Like just then I plugged in my headphones and it stopped the music for some reason. And an advert came up. I don't know why. But we've got it on Facebook tonight. I'm just going to go into my YouTube comments so I can see you commenting live. Hello everyone on Facebook. Facebook, can you hear me? Thank you to the mods. Sorry about that, folks. So I can see you commenting live. Yeah, thanks to the mods. We've got Georgina over on Facebook. We've got Run to Christ here on YouTube. Well, I say here on YouTube, but I guess I'm on Facebook as well. Thanks to Run to Christ. Thanks to Georgina for modding tonight. Everyone who's listening on Facebook, please join in the chat. Well, I say here on. Yeah, I was echoing because I had my phone in the background and the sound was coming through the phone. There's a slight delay on the audio when it broadcasts live, so. Yeah, so this is exciting, isn't it? We've got a broadcast both on YouTube and Facebook, expanding the stream. And tonight we've got a good interview about the Third Temple. Quite exciting. But officially we start in about 20 minutes. Well, there's a lot of things to iron out with these technology, but the more we do it, we'll get there soon. There should be something called Nightbot in here that helps, but currently Nightbot is not responding to us. Hello, Dave. Good evening. Welcome to Mod Dave. Nightbot promised us it would show up. Oh, I think I see Nightbot. Is Nightbot with us? I think I see Nightbot, right? Yeah, so I think we're ironing it out slowly. As I say, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Good to see you all with us. Thank you for coming. I think Nightbot doesn't like links, which is something I'll have to look at. Good evening, the Major from London, England. Thank you for joining us. Yes, that guy Richard, it has indeed. Appreciate you being with us tonight. So tonight's going to be some topics that are certainly charged. We'll remind you, please be respectful in the comments as we talk about some of these things. Yes, please like the video on YouTube and share it, and on Facebook, please click the like and share it on Facebook. No, it starts at 3 p.m. EST, Cindy Temple. Thank you, Run to Christ. That's the Facebook link if anyone wants to like and follow on Facebook. How are you all doing on Facebook anyway? Thanks for joining us on Facebook tonight, folks. Michelle Vasquez on Facebook. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Tavon Hargett on Facebook. Thank you, Georgina, for moderating on Facebook tonight. Yeah, please do share the stream and like it and everything. It really helps to get the live stream out there. And we're going to be talking about some important topics tonight. So how's the sound for everyone? Is it coming through nice and clear? Is it distorted? How does the microphone sound to you all? People are saying it sounds good, so that's a good sign. So we are just rolling over the hour. It's 3 p.m. in EST. It's 8 p.m. in the UK. Thank you, Court Files. Google Maps for yeah. Hello Nana P on YouTube. Hello everyone tonight for joining us. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. It's 8 o'clock now. And we are just coming to the beginning of the show. We're going to be talking about some interesting stuff tonight. We're going to be talking about the Third Temple. And guess what? We have an exclusive interview with a guy called Adam Berkovitz, who works with Israel's 365 News and also is very closely connected to one of the Third Temple advocate groups. And he's going to be telling us about the things that are going on in regards to the Third Temple. And it should be an interesting interview because he's not a believer. And I think it's important for us to talk to these people, to the people who are involved in this, to plant seeds and find out what their plans are and what they're doing. So we'll be speaking to Adam Berkovitz soon in an exclusive interview. So W8 Farms is from Texas. Thank you for joining us tonight. Nacho the Don is here. Cheryl A is here. Welcome everyone to the YouTube viewers tonight. Laurie Moore is from Knoxville, Tennessee. Wonderful. We've got a lot of people from America watching the show. And Buffalo 417 says, I agree, they want to build a third temple because they don't believe in Yeshua. Brother Hemi is from Florida. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Sabi Vet is from Nashville, Tennessee. And if you're watching us on Facebook, a lot of people are watching over on YouTube. So feel free to either watch on Facebook or on YouTube. Some people like to watch on YouTube because there's a lot more people there. But yeah, please join in the chat in Facebook or YouTube, wherever you are. It's great to have you with us, whichever platform you prefer. Tonight is our first night streaming on Facebook. We've got this special technology that broadcasts over several different platforms. Miss J is from London, UK, not too far from myself. Thank you for joining us. Josie Rose is from Devon, UK. Welcome, Josie Rose. Good to see you and have you with us again. And Josie has actually helped us set up an interview next week, in which we'll be speaking to a guy called David, who used to work with UK Column and has some very interesting insights about the things that are going on in our culture. So really, we want to make this show, this radio show, I suppose you could call it, we want to make it about the things that are going on in the world, in our culture, speaking about some of the tough issues, some of the things that are going on that are very important in Bible prophecy, in society. Have a good time just meeting each other and chatting and fellowshipping on here. And right, I'm going to take that off the top now because we have started. There we go. So yeah, something else I wanted to do tonight. I have, unfortunately, that for the people that became a member, so we had about 15 members, but unfortunately, I was updating the system. If you're on the YouTube chat, you'll be able to see this. If I was updating the system, and if you're on the YouTube chat, look at this. These are the new emojis. We've got on air, we've got the cross, we've got the Rise logo, and we have got the special duck. The duck is there. If the YouTube chat gets out of control, then you will see the mallard, the duck, will appear, and members can put the duck on there. But you may see the duck on the screen now. It's just a way of controlling this. If it gets out of hand, this is what happens. And you may be able to hear this. Okay, and that is Mr. Mallard, and he will come on the screen if it ever gets out of control. And so if the members who have access to the duck, you can feel free to just post it in the comments. I mean, if the live chat just gets out of control with trolls and crazy stuff. So that's the duck there. So if you're a YouTube member, you have those extra emojis. But anyway, the point I was making was that I, unfortunately, when I was updating the YouTube member features, it unfortunately cancelled a load of members. So if you were a member and you're no longer one, that's because it was cancelled. So you have to rejoin, just to let you know. And I won't bring it up again. But if you want to join the channel, then see, can use your phone. You've got a different duck. Okay, fair enough. It's not the official duck, but yeah. If you want to join, then I think you might have to go to a web browser like Google Chrome or Safari, type in rseonline.org, and then there should be a join button by the subscribe. The problem is that there's some kind of bug on the YouTube app. So there was some people who wanted to join as a member and join the membership for the live stream, but unfortunately, the YouTube app doesn't seem to work. So if you were trying to do that, you may have to do it from Chrome or Safari and just type in rseonline.org, and then there should be a join button next to subscribe. But thank you for joining us tonight. Redeemed, thank you for joining us. Praise the Lord Jesus all, she says. Anita Hoskins says hello from Memphis, Tennessee, USA. Let's have a quick look on Facebook to see what's going on there. I want to say hello to everyone on Facebook. Michelle Vasquez is with us. It's good to see you. Thank you. Red Assembly is from Ohio. Heavenbound 45 is from Andorra. Where's Andorra? I've heard of it, but where is Andorra? Sandwich. Very interesting. As I said, for the people just joining us tonight, we will be speaking to Adam Berkowitz, who is a journalist for Israel 365 News in the Golan Heights, and he used to be. Does anyone remember the website Breaking Israel News? Does anyone remember that? That used to be a quite a popular website for latest news on the temple and things. A lot of people used to use that in the Truth Movement online, breaking Israel news. Well, that newspaper changed to Israel 365 News, and Adam Berkowitz is a writer for that. So they rebranded, so that's now Israel 365 News, and Adam knows a lot of things about what's going on in Israel in terms of the Third Temple advocate movements. So we'll speak to him. We'll do the interview for that in about 10 minutes, I think. Hi, Penny C from Wyoming. Welcome. If you're new to, hello from Kenya. Clay Feet is in Kenya, listening from Kenya. Wow, that's incredible. Hello, Blue Fairy UK from London. Good to see you here. Amazing to see people from Africa. Wow. People all over the world. Kansas. Carol is from Kansas. And as I said before, what we do here is just a time to meet other people in the chat. If you're watching, if you're one of the few hundred people watching on YouTube, or if you're watching this on Facebook, please do join in the live chat. Please do chat to others. That's mainly the point of doing it, just to bring people together, to talk about what's going on, to introduce each other, and to speak to people, do interviews, and even at some points to do call-ins. We've done that. We did that last week, where we have a phone number that people can call in and talk about whatever that is on their mind, within the YouTube terms, of course. We have to be very careful on this platform, of course, as I'm sure you know. Mercedes, again, I remember you from last week. Mercedes is in Houston, Texas. John Lucero is from Rawlins, Wyoming, USA. New Jersey. Dadjila is from France. God bless you too. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. Excellent. Yeah. So we as I said, we're going to talk a bit about the temple tonight. There's different opinions on whether that third temple building would be built in Jerusalem as part of the Bible prophecy. I know that certainly certain views, like dispensational view, would say that it will be, and that Paul was talking about the third temple in some of those passages in the New Testament. Is it Thessalonians? About the Antichrist sitting in that temple. Obviously, we know as Christians that we are the temple, but we're just tracking the clear preparations that some people are making in Jerusalem to make that come about. Hello, Daniel Gomez from Nicosia in Cyprus. Wow, I've been there, yeah. Cyprus is an amazing place. Yeah, and Heavenbound says the Temple Institute has everything ready for the Antichrist. Well, of course, they don't think they've got things ready for the Antichrist. They think they're doing the right thing. I did go to the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, and the philosophy that they push there, you're not allowed to take photos or videos, so unfortunately I wasn't able to make a video in there, but they certainly have everything prepared. All the different the altars and the utensils, the instruments, and also there's a giant menorah near the Western Wall, which is in a thick glass case that is incredibly thick and secure and bulletproof. And there's a golden menorah which is probably twice my height. That is sitting there near the Western Wall and is prepared for the third temple, and it's made out of pure gold. So I don't know if you guys know that that's actually there in near the Western Wall. And so they've got all these different things ready for the third temple, and they certainly believe that they're going to do it. Okay, there's a Facebook question come through from Run to Christ there and Georgina on Facebook. Someone asks, okay, Thomas O'Callaghan says, David, do you think the AC, the Antichrist, could be from the ISLAM religion? It's interesting you said that because the Mahdi, someone sent in a comment about the Mahdi the other day. I'll see if I can find that. But that's a very good question. Thank you for sending it in. Has anyone in the comments got any insights into that? Into the Mahdi and how that might fit into the to this topic? If anyone has any insights in that, how you think that might carry, I mean, there's all different sorts of religions have this idea of some kind of leader or some kind of messiah or some kind of leader that they're waiting for. I'll see if I can find that comment that someone else sent in the other day. But if you, oh, hello, Cheryl A became a member. Thank you for joining. Appreciate for you joining the channel and supporting it. That's very kind of you for becoming a Rise member. Yeah, while you're doing that, I'll just see if I can find this comment. But if you have any thoughts on that, please add it to the comments. Please add it to the comments if you have any thoughts on that comment that we got in there. As I say, I'm just trying to find this this comment that was sent in the other day because it was such a good comment. I wish I had got it up on here for you, ready for the show, but I didn't expect to actually speak about it. Okay, is this it? Yes, this is it. Okay, let me just read part of this to you, and I want to be careful as I read it because, for obvious reason, I don't want to step over any boundaries on the site. But so this guy called Felix, he sent in this comment. He said, "Just be wary. Before our real Jesus Christ," and I want you to react to this and say what you think to this comment and this concept. He said, "Just be wary. Before our real Jesus Christ reclaims Jerusalem, there is a prophecy in ISLAM teaching that correlates with Revelation, of course, as a counterfeit copy. But you can align this prophecy with Revelation 13 in order to discern this teaching. The prophecy in this particular religion teaches about a Mahdi, the 12th Imam, that will reign from Jerusalem, and his main task will be to, quote unquote, correct the Christians, i.e., correcting the Christians that, in their eyes, in this commenter's eyes, they will correct on the idea that Jesus was just a man, not God, and that he never died, only ascended directly into heaven. That is the Jesus of this particular religion. That's then their Jesus will come and make great signs and wonders to deceive the multitudes, i.e., the Mahdi correlates to the beast, the son of perdition, and that Jesus being the prophet of the beast system that will deceive millions. But even in this teaching, talks about a 7-year reign for this figure, the Mahdi. But then when these 7 years are over, then the real Jesus Christ will come. So, and then it goes on talking a bit more about it. It says it would perhaps be good if you could also make a video about this so your audience is also made aware. As the Bible instructs us to know thine enemy. If we know our enemy, we'll be able to recognize him when he appears. So, what do you think to that? That was a comment that was sent in. And that's not my opinion. I don't know enough about that, but that's what someone sent in. Do you think that that's got any relevance at all? What do you think to that? I don't know a whole lot about those particular doctrines in some of these the religions. I've not studied enough about it, but if does anyone listening, does that sound about right? What Felix said? Does that sound about right to you? Anyway, yeah. Well, some Sword of the Spirit says repeat what was said, but I can't repeat it. I don't know who was here for that. Did anyone hear what I said? Okay. Yes. Well, some people heard what I said, but I don't know. I found that interesting. That's what Felix said, and he sent in. So I don't know if that's relevant, but basically, that's that there is this belief in this figure called the Mahdi, and I don't know how that correlates with what happens. But there's, as I said before, that a lot of these religions, the world religions, there's a lot of people that are waiting for this figure, a figure. It's like, have you seen that is it in Hinduism? Um, they have this, and I really need to actually to look at this first, before speaking about it. But in Hinduism, they have these figures that are like the Avatar. Remember that movie Avatar? I'll show you it here. You see this? It's very strange, but there are these figures that they believe that they will come and bring unite the world in love and one and all of that. But some of these figures in these religions are pretty interesting. But yeah, they actually look like the blue skinned Avatar. Oh dear, sorry about that. They actually look like the blue skinned Avatar, like in the Avatar movie. But maybe we'll talk about that sometime. I'd need to really look at it and prepare. Did you see that? Did you hear that duck? Did anyone hear a duck? Oh dear. I think we had an error there. Sorry, the duck started quacking again. But yeah, interesting topics for sure. Tavern Hargett says, "Can we request to speak? Um, if you want to, just type a comment, Tajel. Sorry, Tavern. If you want to type, I can read it, and you're speaking to us through Facebook." Tavern says about the Dajjal is supposed to have one eye, hence the one eye symbolism. And there is a reference to that potentially. Is it in the book of Zechariah? Um, is it the book of Zechariah? The right eye darkened. Yeah, Zechariah 11:17 says, Zechariah 11:17. I'll bring it up on the screen. It says, oops. It says, "Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm, and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened." That's in Zechariah 11:17, which is interesting, yeah, because there is that concept of the Dajjal and all of that. Oh, right. Okay. Okay, there's a problem here. Sorry about that. The duck is not supposed to quack when I go on there, so I've managed to now turn that off. I do apologize. It's only supposed to come on when he comes on the screen, when there's a problem, because he's the one that actually can sort out some of these problems. But anyway. And you see him there in the chat. He's there. So, yeah, Linda says the right eye being darkened is bad. So, do you guys think that this is why a lot of this? Do you think this is related to that symbolism that is done in the Luciferian celebrities? Do you think that's one of the reasons they do that? Is that a reference to the darkened eye, as it says in the book of Zechariah, in relation to the Antichrist? Do you think that's why they're all doing it? Do you think that's why all of this goes on? Well, all of those types of symbols they're obviously for a reason. I mean, and how it possibly correlates to like what we read in the book of Zechariah about the right eye being darkened. And someone said the eye of Horus. Crispy Real, yes. He says yes. Crispy Real says yes. Eye of Horus, Justine Defoe says, yeah. One eye obsession, for sure. I mean, maybe some things you could say are coincidental about certain things, but not when it's just the same thing over and over again, right? It's definitely seems to be intentional when it's the same thing over and over again. Yeah, Nana P says it's the eye of Horus that they do. And you know, all of these things appear to be connected together, as we talked about before. You know, on the statue in the Book of Daniel, you've got all of those different empires, which I'll bring up now. You've got all those different empires in the statue of Daniel, which ultimately Jesus Christ comes back and destroys that stone, that rock that's thrown. But I'll put it on here for you to see. So all of those kingdoms of the world in the book of Daniel: Babylon, Medes and Persians, Greece, ancient Rome, and then restored Rome, like Rome 2.0, that some interpret it like that, about this restored Rome. Could you say that's the Holy Roman Empire? But that's just interpretations. I mean, there are different interpretations for these things, right? But basically, the crushing rock, the kingdom of God, Jesus Christ, takes out the whole thing. So the kingdoms of this world, when Jesus returns, he comes up and establishes his kingdom, his everlasting kingdom. And it's interesting that in one of the commentary I read, the kingdom of the beast, that the beast confederation, that last one with the Antichrist at the head, it's referred to as the last Gentile dominion of the earth. The last Gentile dominion of the earth. Because ultimately, Jesus is going to return and he's going to establish his everlasting kingdom. And that rock in the book of Daniel is a symbol of God's kingdom, of Jesus Christ and his return. Because even though these things are all over the world, and it's crazy to see all of these things across the world and how they show this in Hollywood and in all different things in the culture, ultimately it's not beyond God. God is still in control, and we are promised that Jesus Christ will return and the Antichrist will be destroyed by the breath of his mouth and the brightness of his coming. And that's a reference to Jesus and his return. It's in the book of 2 Thessalonians, chapter 2, verse 8. It says, "And then shall that wicked be revealed, or that lawless one be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming." And then it says, "Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. For this reason, God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all may be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." It's very powerful words, and we certainly seem to be in that time period, right? Where there's just mass deception and mass delusion. And it's amazing to be alive at that time. It's an honor and a privilege. Something that came to my attention recently. It's not a Christian quote. It's actually by Charles Dickens. But anyway, I just found it quite moving, really, and an apt description of the times we're in, perhaps. He said, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair." And sometimes it does feel like that, right? It's just amazing times, but also very difficult times. And that really rung true with me. Just the times we're in. It's difficult. It's amazing to see, but at the same time, it's difficult. It's hard, but it's also amazing to be part of. I don't know if you guys, if you relate to that. Do you sometimes feel the same way? Well, that's it. It's harvest time, as Court Files says in the chat. It's harvest time, and it reminds me of the verse where Jesus said, "The harvest is great, but the laborers are few." The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And then he said, "Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers in his harvest. So, yeah, anyway, that's just a side note, really. We kind of went on down a trail there, but thank you for the comment that was sent in via Facebook. Thank you to the person that sent that in. It's very interesting indeed. It's always interesting to see what others believe and how that may tie into the things that are going on. So, and also to be wary of deception. That's from Thomas O'Callaghan. Well, Thomas says living in the end times is like being in a car crash in slow motion. Wow. It is. It's crazy to see how things happen in the world. And I'm going to first go on to this because the subject tonight, as I said, is the third temple and how this all ties in together. We're just going to watch a video clip to set us up for that, to set us up for the subject tonight. This is a little interview I did in the West Bank in Israel. This interview is just a brief one. It's from a guy called Roddy, who is very up on the things going on as well. I mean, it's amazing when you're in Israel. There's just people who just know, just very intelligent people who are interesting to speak to. And then in a bit, we'll go on to our exclusive interview tonight with Adam Berkowitz about the Third Temple. Adam Berkowitz is from Israel 365 News, and he's very, very in touch with things that are going on. This interview tonight, later, will be with Adam, and it's he's going to shed some light on what's going on in Israel with the temple preparations and the red heifer, which has been in the news recently. I mean, there's been a few times that people have said, well, this is the red heifer, this is the red heifer. It's not manifested every time, but they certainly now have transported red heifers to Israel from Texas. This is a very recent thing that's happened. Of course, we don't fully know whether they're actually going to be used, but some people think they are. But these red heifers, and guess who bred these red heifers? And this is, to me, this is strange. It's stunning. But guess who bred these red heifers in Texas? George Bush. No, George Bush did not. George Bush did not breed the red heifers. Seek and you shall find. No. Bill Gates did not. No, not Bill Gates. Johnny, no. So we've had George Bush and Willie Nelson. No, not Willie Nelson. Not your Nan Caldwell. No, not John Wayne. Anyway, so we've had some strange suggestions, but no, the person that bred these red heifers potentially for the temple is a Christian. And that's my point. Why I find it, I found that concept a little bit strange. Because the thing is we know that the final sacrifice is Jesus, right, for sin, and that there are no more sacrifices for sin, and Jesus perfectly fulfills the red heifer symbolism and what it means that he was the perfect sacrifice. So to me, for a Christian to provide a red heifer for potentially what in their eyes for the temple offering, it just seems a little bit contradictory. I don't really understand why Christians want to do that. I mean, I'm not trying to judge there. To me, it doesn't. I don't understand why. but because of what it represents. Michelle Vasquez, thank you for joining us on Facebook. She says, "Are the heifers of age?" All I know is that they have transported these heifers from Texas via some kind of transport plane, and the heifers have been taken to Israel I think it's in the last couple of weeks. As far as they are concerned, they are without blemish. But there's been a few times that's been said before, so I'm not sure if this is any different now. So it doesn't mean it's definite, but this has happened, and I'm just literally reporting that this has happened as I've been told by Adam Berkowitz. And so that's what's been going on. So let's just go to this clip. This is just to set the stage. This is Roddy in Israel as we begin to speak about the third temple and what it represents. Okay, so I'm just going to play this clip.
Look, the whole world wants to talk about this temple thing. When is the temple going to be rebuilt? So I don't know. Maybe there's going to be one built, maybe not. But let's think about this for a second, because we know as soon as they get ready to build it, it's going to cause World War III and IV combined. So let's compare a couple of things. Let's look at the temple that Solomon, Zerubbabel, and Herod built. We've got a stone structure that is permanent. It doesn't move. And then let's compare that to the temple that God actually tells Moses to build. It's the tabernacle in the wilderness, the Mishkan. What's the difference between the permanent tabernacle? Is that this one is mobile, okay? They moved this all around. But here at Shiloh, it stood for 369 years. But what's another key indicator of this temple? This temple, the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodeshim, is covered in 11 layers of what? Skin. Why is the world looking for a permanent structure that can't be moved? Maybe we should be looking for a temple that is portable and covered in skin. One is made out of stone, the other one is covered in skin, animal skins. Yeshua HaMashiach talks of this. He says that we are the temple. This even goes back to the Tanakh. Well, yes, I think probably at some point in the future we're going to have one, but maybe we're looking at it from the wrong mindset at this point in time. So that's just...
Because our body is the temple.
For sure.
And Christ lives in us.
Yes. Well, the laws are here. He does, but the laws are here. Right? This is going to be Jeremiah 31:31.
Do you think this could tie into the transhumanism?
That's a really good point. Is it the issue?
I've just got a editorial reasons. Got to change the sound here for a second. Be back in 2 seconds. Just because of the editorial issues on YouTube.
DNA, the foundation, the very foundation of all human life, and we start to alter that. Why is that not the abomination? These are just different ways to think about it. This is not definitive, it's not dogmatic. It's just we need to think a little bit differently and more spiritually towards what Christ tells us, Yeshua, and the scriptures tell us.
But you still think there could be another temple?
At some point, we've got Ezekiel's temple. I think we're going to have it at some point. When that is, I have no idea. I do know nothing good is going to happen once it's built, because we know that the Antichrist is going to stand up there and proclaim himself God. No good comes from that.
So it could happen on the Temple Mount, and they're ready to build the next temple, aren't they?
Look, if we read the scripture of Solomon building the temple, it was prefabricated, and not the sound of a hammer could be heard when he put it together. That's 3,000 years ago. How fast do you think they can put together a prefabbed building today? My guess is less than a week.
And we've seen a lot of signs of that they're preparing to build it already.
You have the Temple Institute. This may be some of the Temple Institute stuff, I'm not sure. Those guys are the experts, and you should go there, film everything, talk to them, get as much information, because the Sanhedrin is in place. They have the actual altar, they have the laver, they have everything. They're ready to rock and roll. But, that's not for us. I don't know that we're supposed to push this. I think this is something that God will put in his time. That's just me.
But time is short, so it seems.
Time is short. It may be weeks.
Really?
I don't know.
But it's literally...
He says, after everybody hears, all right, from a believer's standpoint, they like to talk about, Yeshua says that this gospel will be preached throughout all the nations. Okay, that's from a believing standpoint. From a Jewish standpoint, our God is legalistic, and so is the believer's God. And so what does that mean? That means if you believe God is justice, all right, that means every human being is going to get to hear the word of God. It's just like in your local county or state or city. Whenever someone brings a lawsuit, the judge, the trier of fact, the first thing they do before that person ever sees anybody is they look at the file to make sure proof of service is done, meaning both parties have heard. Before God returns, all right, he wants to make sure every one of his creators that they have heard the word. And behind every tree and every rock and in any spacecraft and any submarine is the Bible today on this device right here. Who hasn't heard? There may be a few, and once that happens, if you believe Yeshua, he says, then the end will come. Me personally, I happen to believe this. So we're very close if you believe Yeshua.
Wow, interesting stuff, eh? Very interesting points he makes about how quickly it was made. And in that passage, he mentioned in the Old Testament that not a sound of a hammer was heard. And when you do speak to some of these people that are quite close to being involved in that kind of thing, they definitely say, well, it could be built in 3 days. But I don't know. I'm just literally reporting those. I'm just interviewing people. Make of it what you will. I'm just presenting you those ideas. I'm not saying it's 100% on point in that sense, but I'm just saying that this is what people will say when you speak to them in Israel, in Jerusalem, and some of those that are quite proactively into that kind of thing. This is the sort of thing they say. So that's the point there. So that was just to set the stage, really. We're going to go to the interview with Adam Berkowitz in just a moment. Adam is on Shabbat tonight. So this was an interview I've done with him earlier. And I think it might be very interesting to you. And we'll roll that in just a couple of minutes. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you for those that are listening on Facebook and YouTube. As I said, if you want to join the channel to get extra things in the live stream, please go to Chrome or Safari and rseonline.org and you can join there. Really appreciate your support. Hello, Saul to Paul. Thank you for joining us. Jeremiah. Hello, everyone on Facebook. Thanks to the mods. Could you reach out and say thank you to the mods tonight? They give their time to make sure we have a civil, nice live chat, because as I'm sure you know, it can get out of hand. That's Run to Christ, David, and Georgina on Facebook. Thank you all for supporting us and helping us. Son of God, thank you for joining as a Rise member. Really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting the channel, helping to the live streams and the events we're doing regularly every week. From now on, these live events will be on Saturdays at 8 p.m. UK time and 3 p.m. in American time, EST. So every Saturday, and then on Sundays we're going to perhaps do in the afternoon, EST afternoon, 3 p.m. ish, just a time of fellowship on Sundays. So every weekend, and maybe even more. But for now, weekends, Saturday and Sunday, all through past Christmas, every week, every Saturday. Please join us at 8 p.m. UK time and 3 p.m. EST. Thank you to Chris Be Real. Thanks for becoming a member. Appreciate it. Thanks for your support. Crispy Real. So we'll go to our interview tonight with Adam Berkowitz. So as I said before, if you've just joined us, please join in the chat. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, please join in the chat. Join in with us, talk to people. If you weren't here before, just to say that Adam Berkowitz is a journalist, a writer for Israel 365 News, which used to be Breaking Israel News, very popular website about the temple stuff. Adam Berkowitz is also friends and close to some of those temple advocate groups, the fringe ones, the other ones. And so he has some interesting things to say. But here it is. This is Adam Berkowitz on Rise Radio. Well, indeed. Now we are joined here tonight by Adam Berkowitz from Israel 365 News. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks so much, David. It's great to be here.
You're welcome, and it's great to have you with us because I know that you not only you work with Israel 365 News, but you're right there in the middle of the plans that are going on in Israel among the certain Third Temple. Yeah, that was. Thank you so much to. Sorry, I had to stop that. Thank you to Jay for gifting 50 memberships. Now you've got loads of people that are members on the YouTube chat. I'll continue the interview in a moment. As I say, that was. This was recorded from earlier because Adam Berkowitz is on a Shabbat at the moment. But thank you to Jay. If you're in the YouTube chat and you want to be gifted a membership, make sure you've got it switched on. You have to switch on in settings to receive free memberships, and when you do have those memberships, you'll get the extra emojis, you'll get the your name lit up, and you'll support the channel, and also the names of members come on the main Rise channel. But I just really wanted to thank you for that, Jay. That's so kind of you. For gifting all those people memberships. So thank you for that. Anyway, this is the interview with Adam Berkowitz, advocate groups. And tonight, we would really firstly we would just like to know what are the latest updates in terms of the development of the Third Temple?
Well, I think the biggest news, and I think it was, even though it was all over the world and everyone heard about it, I think the real implications were hugely underrated. Of the arrival of the red heifers in Israel, that's actually been under wraps. The people who are in charge of the red heifers are keeping it very low key. The reason is because there are a lot of people who don't want the red heifers to come back. And for various reasons, political reasons, because it would mean that now the Jews are totally able to begin the temple service. And there's political implications and religious implications. So a lot of people are against it, and it would be very easy to stop that from happening. All you really have to do is go in with a sharp object, a nail, and walk up to the red heifer and poke a hole in it or poke it, and you've then rendered it unfit to be used. So it's really incredibly simple. And I remember when they first started looking for the red heifer, they always kept the locations in Israel secret because they were afraid of, for example, the Shin Bet, the Secret Service, which is very left wing, somehow getting involved. Various religious groups, both Jewish and Christian. There are a lot of Jews who do not want the Third Temple to return, which I cannot understand. I mean, it's in the Bible, it's pretty clear. And so there are a lot of reasons why people would not want it to happen. So they're keeping it very under wraps. There's going to be a Red Heifer Center opened up in Shiloh, where the public can go see the red heifers and learn more about it. Which, I mean, we haven't had a red heifer in almost 2,000 years, so it would be a nice thing to learn about. The problem is Shiloh is in Samaria, and it's not really a lot of most tourists don't go there, even though it was the site of the tabernacle for 400 years. So it's a biblically significant place. So that's going to be opening up.
These are the red
Um,
heifers from Texas.
these are the red heifers from Texas Christians.
Right. I heard
It
about
was
this.
provided by Christians, which is also very interesting. There's a story in the Talmud about a red heifer being provided by a non-Jew. So that's it's not unprecedented. There's a precedent in the Talmud. It was very closely connected. It's an interesting story, closely connected to the commandment of honoring your father, which apparently the Talmud was trying to say that non-Jews are very strong in and should be honored for that. But these are the red heifers. There were 5 red heifers that came from Texas, pure, totally certified. The problem is that they may become unsuited if, for example, they grow hairs that are not red. And by the way, when we say red, the rabbinic teaching is that it's actually brown, a deep brown. So if you see them, they're not like bright orange or something like that. They're brown. It's a breed that is brown.
So do you think these are the archetype red heifers that you would need for the temple?
If they fulfill the requirements, then they're exactly what we need. And there are 5 of them. So they just have to be checked. Checking them is not an easy deal. You have to inspect every hair on its body very closely, and the rabbis go over it with magnifying glasses from nose to the tip of the tail, and the hooves. The hooves are especially problematic, and it's a big animal. And as it's described in the Bible as a red heifer, and not a it's I'm sorry, not as a red heifer. In the Hebrew, it's a para aduma, which is a red cow, as opposed to an eglah, which is a calf. So it has to be 2 years and 1 day. And if I'm not mistaken, that's probably going to be around Passover time.
Okay, so these red heifers are in Israel now, or are they still in Texas?
They are in Israel now. I was there in Tel Aviv at the airport when they came off the plane.
Oh wow!
And there's a lot of problems. Like, for example, they cannot have any wound or blemish, so they were not allowed to have ear tags. And as anyone who works with cows knows, as soon as the calf is born, you put in an ear tag, which puts a hole in its ear. But because of COVID, the person who was charged with who was the worker who put in the ear tags was not there for a week or two. So these particular calves did not get the ear tags. So, which is really unusual. And so they were kosher. And then to transport them, the question was, how do you identify them? They need ear tags. They don't have ear tags. What can they do? So they put in RFIDs, chips under the skin. We're rediscovering the wheel. It's really, everything has to be. We've never done this before. There was actually an experiment where they burned an entire cow with the wood to see how many ashes would be made and how many people could be purified by that. It's a whole big process.
How on earth do they get those red heifers over to Israel on the plane? They a special type of plane for that?
No, air freight.
Okay.
It's regular air freight, but they needed very special permission because importing livestock is really problematic for veterinary issues, disease and whatnot. But they got the special permission. It wasn't cheap either, and like I said, it was a Christian Jewish joint effort. One of the things
that's interesting to me.
It's very interesting.
Well, for one that comes into my mind is that Christians don't tend to think that, don't believe that sacrifices should come back because we believe that Jesus is the final sacrifice. So why do these Christians provide this red heifer for that?
Well, first of all, your statement is correct for a lot of Christians. But there are a lot of Christians in the world, and Christian theology is a lot more textured than many people realize. And I have spoken to Christian theologians who are very much on board with this. And so there are Christians who support this. From the Jewish side, we don't really need the red heifer, meaning, according to Jewish law, we can bring sacrifices that are time-bound public sacrifices. That would be the daily sacrifices, the twice daily sacrifices, and it would also be the Passover offering. So for us, the only problem is we're not allowed to bring a sacrifice anywhere except the Temple Mount. The voluntary offerings cannot be brought unless you're purified by a red heifer. And what that means is that no Christians can bring sacrifices until the red heifer comes back.
But what are these sacrifices for? Are you talking about sacrifices for a festival or a full-blown sacrifice as a sin offering?
Well, David, let's say you got a Lamborghini. Or actually, let me say something I'd rather say. Let's say you had a baby boy. And that's something that made you really thrilled and delighted. I'm sure you would go to church and thank Jesus. But let's say you also wanted to bring a sacrifice to the God of Israel. What you would do is you would get on a plane, you'd come to Israel, you'd find a sacrifice that you want to bring, and you would bring it to your friend Adam Eliyahu, and we'd meet in Jerusalem, and you'd bring me your little lamb or your little sheep or your little goat or your turtle doves, and you'd say, could you do me a favor? And I'd be like, of course, I'd love to do you a favor. I would take it up to the Kohen, and the Kohen would perform the sacrifice for you. And this was actually very, very common in the temple times, that people who were straight up idolaters would want a connection with the God of Israel, and they would do this. I mean, the God of Israel is the God that Jesus worshipped. So, I mean, I don't want to impose any assumptions about your belief or theology, but in the temple times, straight up idolaters and people who weren't idolaters but just weren't Jewish would bring their sacrifices, would bring sacrifices to the temple, and the Jews would act as their intermediaries, as their kohanim, as their priests, and bring it up to the temple for them.
Well, for me,
but that absolutely cannot happen until the red heifer comes back.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say absolutely. I believe in the God of Israel, and I believe that Jesus, Yeshua, is the God of Israel and his son. But for me, I would say that it's absolutely fine to celebrate different things, including Jewish festivals and Hanukkah,
Sure.
if you want, all those types of things.
Sure.
But the line, which is what the book of Hebrews in the New Testament talks about, the line is not going back to sacrifices for sins as a Christian, because Jesus is and was that final.
Well, there were a
sin
lot
offering.
of different sacrifices. You said holidays. The only holiday offering we can bring right now, and actually the holiday offering that we are required to bring right now, but the government won't allow us to, is the Passover offering, which was not a sin offering. That was a Thanksgiving offering. And you can't, and because the only offerings I can bring right now are the twice daily offerings and the Passover offering, anything other than that, I can't do. I cannot bring anything other than that. No holiday offerings, nothing. So there are some sacrifices that I should be making now, or that Israel should be making now. And those are the only ones we're allowed to make. So any offerings made by non-Jews would not be permitted right now because we don't have the red heifer.
Right, and with the Passover, is it the cedar? You've got the bread with the stripes and holes in it.
Yeah.
And that that from my perspective of what I've seen, that represents the stripes and the piercing that was done to Jesus, Yeshua, on the cross, and how that's a memorial is symbolic to me and to others I know who are Christians.
Well, that's interesting because when I eat matzah on Passover, it doesn't have any stripes or holes. On Passover I've taken on the custom of eating Yemenite matzah, and
Okay.
Yemenite matzah actually looks like a pita bread.
Okay.
It's smooth and no holes, no lines.
Right. That's interesting.
So it's like your Christian interpretation comes from an Ashkenazi tradition, but not from the biblical tradition. And it's pretty clear that the Yemenite version is more close to the original matzahs. But I don't mean in any way to
no, that's interesting to know. But for sure, the bread and the wine represents, as you know, in Christian communion, that's a representation of Jesus's flesh and blood that he gave as a ransom for our sins on the cross. So, yeah, but no, it's interesting. I before we go on to some more of those topics, I just want to find out.
To be honest, it can also equally represent the temple, because in the temple they had the showbreads that were always present, which were essentially large matzahs that were folded. The showbreads were matzahs; they were unleavened. The only time leavened bread was brought into the temple was on Shavuot, when they brought the 2 loaves of bread that had been rising since Passover, since the end of Passover, or since the beginning of Passover. But there was always the showbreads, and they had the water libation, the wine libations. The water libations were on Sukkot, but and Jesus was essentially connected to the temple. He was always hanging out in the temple, up and down, and doing the temple service. And I mean, he did. I mean, the Last Supper was Passover, So it wouldn't be surprising to me that there's, something, a very deep symbolism in Christianity connected to the temple, connected to Passover and Jesus.
Well, we also know that Jesus was in the temple at Hanukkah, which is something we're talking about on the show today.
Yeah. I don't know the details of that, but someone told me that recently, and I was like,
Feast of Dedication. Yeah.
Wow, that's intense. Hanukkah, that's pretty intense, because Hanukkah is when we declare freedom from the Romans, and it's not very theological. It's pretty political.
There's the Maccabees, and as far as I understand it, you don't really read the Second Maccabees, but
no, it's not in the canon.
No, it's the same for us.
Which is very. It's interesting.
I
have friends.
It's in the Apocrypha. It's not in our Bibles either, but yeah, it's an interesting story with Antiochus Epiphanes and how he desecrated the temple with the pig and the abomination.
Right. That wasn't political either. That was religious.
Right.
That was religious. So yeah.
So can we touch on just as we started, just how close, Adam, do you think that you are in Israel to this third temple?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify a little. We don't need a temple. What we need is a temple service, and we don't need an actual structure for that. All we need is an altar, which is a pile of rocks, quite literally, and not even, bricks. You need plain, uncut rocks, and a pile of them, which I get a group of young men, hand them each a rock and say, start running. I once asked the rabbis from the Temple Institute, if Bibi Netanyahu woke up tomorrow morning and said, let's start the temple service, how long would it take to start it? It would take about 3 or 4 hours. Everything is ready. Everything is ready. There's a difference also between the temple as it was when it was destroyed or around and when it was in service, and what we need to start the temple service. All we need, like I said, is a temple of rocks. And what's disturbing is that when they came back from Babylon, um, they didn't build the temple, but they immediately began the temple service without the temple. And that's what we can do pretty much right now. We have the Kohanim. There's also in Jewish law, we have a concept of lechatchila and b'diavad. Lechatchila is under ideal circumstances, the ideal. If you wanted to build an ideal temple, versus b'diavad means, this is what you got, and is it acceptable? So to begin the temple service, we need an altar. And it's okay to start the twice daily sacrifice without the red heifer in ritual impurity. If it's impossible to do the ritual impurity, then we can do the twice daily sacrifice. And we have the priests, we even have the utensils. They have to be dunked into a mikveh, into a ritual bath. We're literally 3 hours away if we get the go ahead. The only thing stopping us is the Israeli government.
Okay. And that's interesting you say that. So do you envisage an altar being built at some point in the near future?
It doesn't have to be built. We can put it up and then take it down right away. And it was actually done once in something that was very problematic and something that a lot of Christians objected to. There was a Noahide offering done on the Mount of Olives by the Sanhedrin several years ago. And it was literally like that. A bunch of stones. We put up the bunch of stones, slaughtered a baby goat, and then burnt it. And the person who slaughtered it was a non-Jew, because Jews are only permitted to do sacrifices in one place, which is on the Temple Mount. And Christians can do sacrifices, or non-Jews rather, can do sacrifices anywhere they want except for the Temple Mount.
Well, this kind of goes with what I've seen in the Temple Institute, which is obviously one of the big temple organizations in Jerusalem. When I went to their tour, where they tell you what they're doing, they say that this temple is more than a building. It's about raising humanity to the next level, to a higher level, and it's not about the building to them. It's that philosophy is definitely in there. What would you say to that?
Well, 4 years ago, I would say that was a lot of pretty words. But in the last 4 years, I think humanity has begun to show some very disturbing colors. And I would say that's definitely true. Man-made, man-inspired institutions are failing in every way possible, basic institutions. The UN was supposed to be like the Sanhedrin. And the UN, oh my gosh, it is it is the voice of evil. It is the voice of everything that can be wrong and perverted about mankind. The UN has taken on. I mean, as an American, I look at America, and the basic institutions for justice have been perverted and failed miserably. We saw what happened with even the practical things like medicine, failed society miserably. In the last, I've been expecting that, if we amongst my friends, we say, if there's going to be another Holocaust, it'll be in America. And we've been saying that, and I mean, we logically and intellectually reasoned that was the case, but 1 month ago or 2 months ago, I don't know, it's been 50 days, I think, since October 7th. You saw the burning embers of anti-Semitism burst into flame. I just never, and no one, the Jews around the world are shocked. They're stunned that anti-Semitism burst out full on, worse than pre-war Germany, in the matter of 1 week or even less. I think that man-made institutions have failed, and I think the Temple Institute was absolutely correct. The only hope of society is Jerusalem. And I'm not talking about Judaism or Jewish. Um, Jerusalem is an international city. It really is, but not in the way that the UN intended. On Sukkot, all of the nations came up to Jerusalem. Solomon, he he connected all nations, and he never lifted a finger. He never did a war. It was through peace. He said, look, let's live together. Let's flourish together. Let's build a temple. You can go, be whatever you are, but we have to agree on the basis of humanity.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying, and I totally agree with the rise of the evil we see in the world, especially what happened, the terrible things that happened in October, and the subsequent movements across the world.
Where they're cheering it on.
Yeah. But the thing is, to me, on the back of that, and that's very true what you're saying. But my concern is, what about Babylon? What about this whole concept of uniting the world and its relation to when that's happened in the past in terms of the Tower of Babel and the philosophies that may come across a bit new age?
Oh, absolutely. You're right. I mean, there's what we call batikun and bakilkul, something that is done for fixing and something that's done for breaking, and it can be something that looks very similar. So, for example, there's a difference between unity and New World Order. Okay, and I think that's what you're touching on. We have to agree on basic concepts. We have to, and they are religious. We don't have to all be one religion, but we have to agree that there is a God and that he requires us certain things. He requires us not to glorify murder. He requires us to advance justice. He requires us. These are the basic Noahide laws. He requires us not to walk up to an animal and rip off its limb to eat. These are the basic laws of the Noahide laws. But at the same time, we're not talking about a new world order where the laws, the ideas behind the new world order are not to advance man. They don't speak to the higher aspects of man, the aspect of man that's created in God's image. The new world order actually relates to the opposite, even though it looks the same. Even though they're talking about unity, they're talking about unity in a way that destroys man.
Yeah, I can understand the sentiment behind it. For me, I would pose the question, and I know there's a lot of people listening that may want me to also pose this question, but how do you know if this figure turns up at the time of the temple? How do you know that this leader, which some may say this is the Messiah in their view, how do you know that this figure is not going to be a deceiver? How are you? Have you contemplated maybe that a figure may turn up who claims to be the Messiah and is actually the opposite?
Well, first of all, in Judaism, there is no concept of the deceiver or the antichrist. In Islam, there is a very strong concept of the antichrist. There's also a concept of how Jesus figures into the final days. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Medina, where Muhammad is buried, next to his grave is an open grave. And that open grave is prepared for Jesus because they say that Jesus never died. He went up to heaven alive. And in the end of days, he will come down to kill anyone who does not convert to Islam. And then his reward for that will be to be buried next to Muhammad in Medina. There's also, and that's actually being yelled out more now since the war in Gaza. They see this as they also have a concept of Gog and Magog, and they see this as Gog and Magog. But we don't have the concept of the Antichrist, but obviously, the elephant in the room, Jews have been deceived by false messiahs in the past. And so we're very cautious of people claiming to be the Messiah. In that regard, I'm not referring to Jesus because he was never accepted by the Jewish people as Messiah, though there were false messiahs. Some. Most. Okay, some. Okay.
Yeah.
Really,
obviously, the first followers of Jesus were Jewish.
Oh, obviously, and what was very sweet was the first followers of Jesus for a long time actually coexisted in Israel with other Jews without proselytizing, and they were accepted as Jews who happened to believe that Jesus was Messiah, and that did not preclude them from being part of the Jewish nation. Judaism is primarily ethnic, with an inherent and implicit belief system. So they were accepted as part of the Jewish nation and lived in Israel.
Well, as far as I know about the history,
mostly in the area that I live in today.
Right. Yeah. The early Christians were persecuted. The early Jewish believers in Jesus, the early Christians, they were persecuted, and then at some point the tables turned.
Jews?
Oh, like the Romans and
Right,
some,
by the Romans.
By
the Romans.
I think there were some that persecuted
because the early Christians were still considered monotheistic, and the Romans were idolatrous, polytheistic, which is why they also persecuted Jews.
But then after the time of Constantine, the tables turned, and then actually the Jews were more persecuted.
That's why I said the first Christians. They were very much a part of the Jewish people.
Right,
very much
but
so.
As I'm sure you may be aware that some Christians, including myself, have the theology where the eschatology, where we believe that there will be a false Christ, an antichrist who will take seat in that temple,
and a false temple.
Yeah.
And that's like I said, I have a very dear friend. His name is John Anderson. He's the Christian director for Cry for Zion, and apparently that belief is misunderstood by some Christians and not universally accepted. So Christianity is huge, and it's not like 2 or 3 simple statements and you're done. It's a complicated theology. So there's different beliefs.
We believe in this figure that will claim to be God himself.
Right.
In a similar way to what we were talking about with Antiochus Epiphanes back in the Maccabees.
Right.
That he
but in
claimed to be
Judaism,
God manifest.
the Messiah is not divine. The Messiah.
So what are the protocols you're looking for in a Messiah?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the false messiahs we had was a man called Bar Kokhba, who led the revolt. His name was,
Simon.
No. His family name. His name was changed to Bar Kosiva.
Okay.
He was Bar Kosiva, and Rabbi Akiva believed him to be Messiah, which that's something. But Rabbi Akiva was a heavy hitter, and so he changed his name to Bar Kokhba, which means the son of the star, because according to Maimonides, according to the Rambam, as per Bilam's prophecy of the Star of Jacob, a Messiah must be preceded by a star, which you believe in as well.
Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
absolutely
showed up, and Jesus was born in Bethlehem. His mother traveled from Nazareth, which is up north, down to Bethlehem, which is in Judea, and in order to fulfill the prophecy. And there was a star.
Yep.
So without the star, there's no Mashiach. Also, the word Mashiach literally means anointed. Mm-hmm. So he has to be anointed. The question is, who anoints him?
Like in the time of David and Saul.
Well, there's a different kind of anointing that's being done for kings, an anointing that's done for the Kohen, for the high priest. he has to be an observant Jew or observe the mitzvahs. He has to be very righteous. Also, we have a two-stage Messiah. We have what's called Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David.
Right.
Mashiach ben Yosef it's not even a person. It's a practical historical process, which many rabbis hold that we've just finished.
Well, I believe Jesus is both of those. It's actually one person.
Okay, right. I hear that.
Right. Because he returns as king. The first time he came was the suffering servant. The second time he comes is...
Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying the two stages that we describe, you're saying are still two stages, but embodied in one person, embodied in Jesus.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. It's very interesting. I mean, it's not surprising.
Because the Pharisees, the Jews at the time that Jesus was here, they were looking for that military leader.
Right.
And so
that would be Messiah from Joseph.
Yeah, and that picture when, the Jesus on the cross, to them that seemed like it wasn't the Messiah, because they were expecting them a Messiah to come to lead them against the Romans, which is what the false Messiah Bar Kokhba ended up doing after Jesus came.
Failing at.
Yeah, and Jesus warned.
We also had a guy named Shabtai Tzvi.
Oh yeah,
I forget when he was, but he also failed.
The Sabbateans and all of that.
Yeah, so we've had that's what I was referring to. Bar Kokhba and Shabtai ben Tzvi, I was referring to them when I was referring to the false messiahs.
Right.
We've made mistakes.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of a little bit very reluctant because of that.
Well, I believe that when Jesus returns, there's the prophecy in Zechariah that they will look upon him whom they've pierced and weep and mourn, and that Jesus returns as we said, as that conquering king who conquers the Antichrist, conquers the world system, comes back and establishes his reign from Jerusalem and the millennial reign. So,
see, Jews have a different requirement or a different methodology. We're required to do commandments, to do mitzvahs, and God has his job. So we're not making any decisions. We're just doing the work. And basically that's how Israel came to be, which is the manifestation of prophecy. So when it happens, we'll see. When it happens, we'll see. I'm not going to argue yes or no right now. I'm just going to do my job.
Well, see, for me, it's very interesting because when I've had these conversations, like with Rabbi Weiss and others, it's very interesting how when he describes the coming Messiah that he's expecting to come to the temple, he's actually describing Jesus, but in a different way, because he doesn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah, so therefore he's applying the same prophecies to this other figure. And what my concern is that through doing that, there could easily be a figure that comes and claims to be the Messiah, fulfilling all of those types of prophecies, but is actually a dictator who ends up turning on the very people that thought he was the one. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but we've been very stubborn for thousands of years. We've not accepted Jesus. We've not accepted anyone else. We've not become Muslim. A lot of Jews are falling by the wayside, and they're clearly not the chosen people. They've become Buddhists. They've become whatever they become, atheists, liberals. I doubt very much that we're going to accept the false Messiah. At least not easily. We Jews can't agree on anything, and I can. It's basically, like I said, we're just doing our job. doing what we're supposed to do. And when it comes, it comes. When the time comes, the time comes. Jews have a very different approach to prophecy. For example, I've spoken to Christians about Gog and Magog. And they get very uptight about it. They're like, oh, Gog and Magog, the end of days, apocalypse. And I'm like, we have a different relationship with God. We've been through some really horrible things. Horrible. Almost every generation has been through something horrible. And first of all, we get through it because we're the Jews. And God promised us that we will always be around. And the second reason is, I mean, from the beginning, from Abraham, from Jacob, our attitude has been, we know what God says, and we'll work it out with Him.
Well, and this is something I want to touch on briefly, actually, because it is very important that I want to confess to you that throughout history there have been some terrible times and terrible things that have been done in the name of Jesus that were not of His nature. And that's something I want to expressly vocalize, that I think it's time that Christians represent Jesus properly and His love and what He did for each and every one of us in coming to this world to rescue us and ransom us from our sins. And I think it's important to say that what's been done in the name of Christianity, when it's been like that, when it's just been horrible, horrific stuff in the past, it is not a true reflection of the gospel. And so I just want to sort of put out that to you, to basically say that I'm aware of that, and it's not a true reflection of the gospel and God's love in Christ to rescue people from their sins, and especially the Jewish people, because as far as I'm concerned, Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. And so I just want to put that out there to you.
I'm so profoundly humbled by what you just said. It's one of the most beautiful testaments of faith that I've ever heard. If your belief in Jesus brought you to that, then it's a beautiful thing. It's a powerful thing. It's a godly thing.
Have you had anyone else say that before?
Not in precisely those words, but I am seeing an awakening among Christians. As soon as they realize what has been done in the name of Jesus, and they realize that it's not an expression of how they relate to Jesus, how they view Jesus, I see some beautiful things. I mean, Jews have always been alone. Bilam also said that, we're going to be a nation alone. And we have been. And now, even though we're seeing these horrible times where people are idiots, insane people are out in the streets again screaming for the blood of Jews, all of a sudden, for the first time in 2,000 years, for the first time maybe ever, Jews have an ally, Jews have a friend, Jews have a brother. Christians who are willing to stand alongside of us and say, I am a Christian, I have this faith in Jesus, and my belief in Jesus compels me to stand with the Jews. It's the first time in history, dude. It's like, and it's really what you just said. I'm struggling not to break out crying. That was an expression of your faith in Jesus, your belief in Jesus, your perception of Jesus, your relationship with Jesus. It's incredibly profound, and it's the first time in history, which makes me believe maybe we're getting somewhere, or some of us are.
Well, I don't know if you've heard of Corrie ten Boom.
Of course.
So there were some that stood
You know,
and put their
it's
neck on the line, but overall there was a lot of churches that didn't intervene in that horrific time in Germany.
right.
But there were some.
There were some, and I mean the Balfour Declaration. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, so I sometimes I'm not so smart, but my not so smartness will sometimes lead me to some interesting insights. One day I realized, hey, the Balfour Declaration was during World War One, not after the Holocaust. The entire Christian movement to bring the Jews back to Israel, and it was a Christian movement. Theodor Herzl, one of his closest friends, I'm very bad at names, was a Christian pastor who believed that the Jews had to come back to Israel. And the entire movement that led to the Balfour Declaration, the Christian movement in England to bring the Jews back to Israel, was not out of guilt for the Holocaust. It was Christians who felt that as Christians, they should help the Jews come to Israel. And I think that's happening again. And all this thing, it's centered around Israel. The Jews cannot be a light unto the nations if we're out there among the nations. We have to, when we're in Israel, we can relate to the world as we're supposed to. We can be a priestly nation. We can be a light unto the nations if we're here. If we're here, and I think a lot of anti-Semitism came from anger that the Jews were not doing what we should be doing. We weren't performing our function, and we couldn't do it while we were in the exile. And now that we're back here, the third temple isn't going to be a synagogue for Jews. It's going to be a house of prayer for all nations. And we're going to be the priests. We're going to serve. That's what a priest does. He's not a king. He's not exalted. And even the king serves. But I think that now that we're back in Israel, we can perform our functions.
You know what I like? I like the zeal. And that's something I've seen in some great people I've spoken to, like yourself and others. I love the zeal. And I think that's something that's inherently seen in the New Testament. I think that's something that's inherently seen in Paul, the Apostle Paul, who was obviously from the tribe of Benjamin. And also we see in our eschatology in the Bible that 144,000 of the 12 tribes come to faith and spread the gospel across the world. So I know this zeal, and I've seen it, is so powerful and so important. And that's something that is to be treasured and celebrated. The problem is when that, as the Bible says in the New Testament, that zeal is not according to knowledge. In the New Testament, we see how zeal can also go the wrong way when it's not based on truth as well. And for me, it's just, I love to see it. And I'm confident that in God's timing, the remnant of Israel will come to him through his way of salvation. And I want to put that to you as well. That's something I see on the horizon.
Okay. I mean, I love you. I think you're wonderful. I think that any connection between you and me, that's a spiritual, godly connection, and can really bring out a lot of things. And I apologize if this sounds not nice or negative anyway, but I'm not going to accept Jesus ever. I was born a Jew. It's my essential identity. It's not a matter of belief or faith.
Do you just out of interest on this conversation? I'm certainly not here to force anyone to, belief is something that has to be a personal choice, a personal decision. But do you see coming to faith in Yeshua? do you feel that that would make one less Jewish?
I think it would be a dereliction of my duty. I stood at Mount Sinai, and God gave me the Torah personally. And I have to keep the Torah. I was at the covenant. I was in the covenant, or I'm part of the covenant of Abraham. And that covenant is very much about the land and about the nation and the people. God brought us out of Egypt as a nation. I think it would be a dereliction of my duty as a Jew. Maybe we need Christians to believe in Jesus. I don't know. But I know that as a Jew, I have a different duty. The commandments, we're not talking about, good deeds. Good deeds are nice. Commandment is, you don't have much choice. Like it or not, you have to do it. It's my job. When God brought us out from Egypt, he didn't set us free. He took possession of his people. We're now God's slaves. Moses was the slave of God. So I have to do this. It's my duty, and I can't walk away from it.
So what do you think, because you mentioned earlier about the Star of Bethlehem, what do you think when you see in the New Testament these prophecies that we've talked about fulfilled in the text, in the person of Jesus?
Well, there's different ways. When I read the New Testament and you read the New Testament, we have very different experiences. When Jesus is baptized, you see Jesus being baptized by, like John told him. When I see Jesus getting baptized, I see a Jewish man jumping into the mikveh and getting ready to do godly service, usually in the temple. When I see in the New Testament they talk about the Son of God, we have the concept Son of God. We're all Son of God. It means something very different. The kingdom of heaven. When we read the Kriyat Shema twice a day, we're accepting the kingship of God. There are basic concepts in the New Testament that come from Judaism, which is not surprising. One of them being that there's going to be a star. Why do you think there's the Star of Bethlehem? Why do you think it was significant enough to be written in the New Testament? Because it meant something. My difficulty comes when they try to make verses in the prophets fit the story of Jesus. That's a bridge too far for me. But there are a lot of basic concepts in the New Testament that come from Judaism, and it's very nice for me. When Jesus is walking around in a wheat field on Shabbat, and he plucks wheat, he's not saying don't keep the Sabbath. What he's saying is, I have a tradition that being very hungry is a mortal danger, and you're allowed to break Shabbos in order to save your life. And in this case, that means plucking wheat, which is forbidden on Shabbos. You can do that if you're really, really hungry, because that's a mortal danger. That's how I understand that. But he certainly did not violate Shabbat, and certainly did not come to say Shabbat is no longer necessary. He just had a different interpretation of Shabbat, which is actually very Jewish.
Right. And so
the rabbis are always arguing about that.
So you see the Jewishness of Jesus pulsating.
Through absolutely. Absolutely. Right. 1,000%. Even the way they discuss things, it was very, it reminded me of all my study of the Talmud. It's so similar. It's in the same style. It's just Jesus was from a specific school of thought that was
But the
thoroughly within Judaism. I
as I'm
mean,
sure you
did the
know, the heart of the gospel is that those good works cannot save you, only by faith, like Abraham believed, and that was
that's
accounted as righteousness.
yeah. That's also a Jewish concept. I have a question. For example, um, when did the followers of Jesus stop keeping Shabbat and start observing the Sabbath on Sunday?
That's a big discussion, even in
Right, it is.
Christian communities. There's the Seventh Day Adventists that say that Rome put it on Sunday, and therefore they changed. But there's also the references in the New Testament about the Lord's Day, and they were worshiping in the Spirit in the Lord on the Lord's Day, and
Really?
the first day of the week, because I don't. I think, as far as I know, the Jewish people continued keeping that day, but also they had the worship on Sunday because it was related to his resurrection, Jesus' resurrection, and the
You're talking
Lord's.
about the first Christians.
Yeah, the Lord's Day became.
Right.
I've read accounts from early church fathers that were talking about
Right, I've heard
worshiping
that as well.
Yeah,
It's just the question is like, at what point did it become? Did they veer off on the major things? Shabbat is a very big thing with us. It's like
yeah,
really, really. I don't
and
know
I
if you've
don't.
ever.
I I personally do not think there's any problem. I know that the Messianic Jewish believers keep they worship on a Saturday as well, and there's absolutely no problem. One doesn't lose their culture because they become a believer in Yeshua. The Jewish believers are still very Jewish in terms of their festivals. They meet together on a Saturday. The main difference it really is not seeing those things as a work to earn salvation. Um, whereas the
Well,
gospel is by grace through faith.
we don't either. We don't keep a tally of our mitzvahs so that when we go up to heaven, we'll say, "Look, I scored I scored a 613. Don't I get in?" We don't do that. There's the ultimate goal, which is attaching yourself to Hashem and doing Hashem's will. I mean, there's a reason why He sends us into the world to do His will in this world, and that's more than just intention, but it's also intention. When you do a commandment, there are two aspects to the commandment. There's the physical action of the commandment, and there's also the intention of doing it. And you need both.
So what do you think about, just before we finish, because we've almost been chatting for about an hour, so we'll
Yeah,
finish
I
in a
mean,
few minutes. It's been
it's,
brilliant, absolutely brilliant to talk to
oh,
you.
really? I
Yeah,
think so. I think so too. You totally floored me. My gosh, you blew me away. Um,
thank God.
there's changes. There's changes happening within the Christian world, and when I connect with Christians, I try to encourage, but not to push or pull. So something like that, what you just said about Christian history with Jews, it's I mean, it's certainly not going to make you Jewish, but it's certainly going to make you a better Christian, a better relationship with Jesus. And if that's what it is, then I'd love to encourage it.
Well, absolutely, and I think it's very important to be open about the mistakes that have been made in terms of the persecution, and even Martin Luther, who I respect on many levels in terms of the Reformation and coming away from Rome, but there were mistakes made at the end of his life, which sadly laid the groundwork in
I
Germany for
think
some of those
I,
things.
I
And
I feel like there's a new Reformation happening, like Reformation Stage 2, reloaded, amongst a lot of Christians. And like I said, I can't touch that. I can't push, pull. I have no input. I'm just watching it, and it's very interesting. I think the creation of the state of Israel, which is like a mind-numbing manifestation of prophecy, on a level and that's so unprecedented in human history, something that no one ever thought could happen. That you'd read the Bible and you'd say, come on, no way the Jews are coming back to Israel. Look at them. They're in these little ghettos all over Europe. They're certainly not ever going to make it back to Israel. And here we are. And we're protecting ourselves in a way that, we have an army, and it's the manifestation of prophecy. And I think it had a profound effect on many Jews, though not all of them. Some Jews have inured themselves and are absolutely unaccepting of this massive change, which should have changes in our theology and even in our practical ways we perform the commandments. But I'm sure it also had a deep and a profound effect on Christianity.
Well, as you say, there was a lot of Christians involved. I mean, I even think about Charles Spurgeon in the 1800s was already saying that the Bible says that the nation of Israel will come back, and absolutely a lot of Christians saw that.
I've heard it said amongst a lot of Israelis that were it not for the Christian support of Israel, there would be no Jews in Judea and Samaria or Jerusalem right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's entirely thanks to the Christian support, which is stunning.
So I want to just pose a couple of question to you before we finish. You say about the unity, and I think that's good on many levels. For me, it's good to build those bridges, as we were saying before, but not at the compromise of the gospel. When we talk about Jesus, you say about some of the prophecies, and the thing I would pose to you is also this. When Jesus made statements like, before Abraham was, I am, and the crowd at that time knew exactly what Jesus meant, that he was describing his deity, because I am obviously is the name given that God showed of himself in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jesus said things like, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father but by me. Now, really, from my perspective, we have to make a choice when we read what Jesus said there. Either it's not true and he's a false prophet, or it is true and he is who he said he is. So where would you fall on that proposition? Would you say Jesus is a real, true prophet and who he said he is, the Son of God, God come to earth in the Messiah? Or would you say that that's patently false? How would you respond to that question? And I know it's a very pointed question. I just want to...
I appreciate the pointedness of it. I'm just always perplexed that for some reason there are Christians who their belief in Jesus seems to be dependent on my belief in Jesus. Whether or not I accept Jesus should have no influence, effect, implications for you. I don't see Jesus as the Messiah or as the manifestation of prophecy. But that should certainly not have any effect on you.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
yeah, like we were saying earlier, that it's if you're...
I've met with you in Jerusalem. Come to Jerusalem, pray to Jesus. Welcome.
And do you think
I'll stand right next to you and pray towards the Temple Mount, pray to the God of Israel.
Do you think that will have any effect on the views of the temple? Because you talked about the Noahide, and I know that one of those is about not allowing blasphemy. To the temple crowd, wouldn't that be a blasphemy if, or
I,
considered
I,
idolatry?
right. That's more precisely that there's that idolatry is forbidden. And Jewish law is a very serious study, and I mean we've had a lot of times to work this through. My understanding is that you have to define what idolatry is, and most modern halachic authorities do not consider Christianity to be idolatry. Let's leave Catholicism out of the picture for now. It's not idolatry, and even if it is, there are different practical implications. If it is, let's say it is, even if you hold by the minority opinion that it is, well, what does that mean? It's actually not. It's what we refer to in Jewish law as shituf, meaning having an intermediary between man and God, and that's forbidden for Jews, but permitted for non-Jews. There's no the prohibition against idolatry in the Noahide laws does not include worshiping Jesus for Christians, because you are ultimately worshiping Jesus and the God of Jesus, who was the God of Israel. So it would be idolatrous for me as a Jew, as a born Jew, to use an intermediary, namely Jesus, to worship the God of Israel. But it is not a prohibition for you to use that intermediary, even if you consider that intermediary to be divine. And that is the minority opinion. The majority opinion is that even if it is, it's not idolatry, not for me or not for you. So it's not really, being Christian is not the prohibition of idolatry. There was a time when it was only Catholicism that it quite probably was, and that was, the whole concept of being an iconoclast, that they have had and have idols, literally idols and icons. That's something that you do not have, as I understand. So that's the strict Jewish law. I'm speaking to you on a rabbinic level. So the Noahide laws would not prohibit you from praying to Jesus. They would prohibit me from praying to Jesus.
Thank you, Adam. Adam Berkovits.
Did I explain that well? It's a complicated matter.
You did. It's a very complicated matter, but yeah, it's. I just wanted to get clarification on that, and I know a lot of others listening would too.
To be honest, Islam is not considered idolatry on any level. They just have a problem with murder, with spilling blood. That's the big problem that they would have insofar as following the Noahide laws.
Right, and we in prophecy we see that there's this one world system that comes in the end times, and there's going to be a lot of deception. There's going to be a lot of delusion.
God forbid.
And we believe that there's going to be this figure who we call the Antichrist, and I believe that's what's going to happen. But I also think that I also believe from what I read in the Bible that there's going to be some wonderful things too, and that many people will come to the God of Israel through his Mashiach.
Hopefully those wonderful things will include you visiting the Golan and joining me in a cup of coffee.
I would love to come and see you if I end up back in Israel again.
Serious invitation, dude. Serious invitation.
Yeah, maybe we could sit down and chat some more. There's so many things we can talk about, and we've covered a lot tonight. And I really appreciate you coming on, Adam Berkovits. It's been fantastic to speak to you, and hopefully we'll do it again.
God willing. God willing.
God bless. Thank you for coming on to Rise Radio tonight.
God bless you too, man.
Adam Berkovits, everyone. There we go. Thank you for joining us for that interview. Absolutely, very interesting. Some of the dynamics there, as I'm sure you'll agree. Please pray for Adam. If you're joining us here tonight on the live chat and listening, please, anyone that can, please, just in this time now, just please say a quick prayer for Adam. Because there are some times that you raise questions to him and you can just see it ticking over in his head. So if anyone can just say a prayer for him, that would be amazing. We'll be putting up that interview at some point on the channel, and you know what? Something I said to Adam, I've said to Adam off air. I described to him one of those stories in the Old Testament, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Joseph, and when obviously he is as well. But when Joseph's brothers came to see him in Egypt, and Joseph was this figure of authority in Egypt, and his brothers didn't recognize him because he was dressed as a Gentile in Egyptian clothing and dressed as that Gentile, but his brothers didn't recognize him until he said, right, everyone get out of the room. And it was then that his brothers saw that he was their brother, he was Joseph, and Joseph's a picture of Jesus. And so I described that story to him, and Adam said he's heard that before from a Christian. And his response was, do you know what? That absolutely floored me. He said that absolutely floored me. When I found out that the parallel there, that Joseph and Jesus, and that his brothers thought he was a Gentile figure, and how that's happened, he said that absolutely floored me. So how amazing is that? So please do pray for Adam. You know, what a testimony that would be if he found faith in Yeshua. So also something I wanted to clarify in that interview I said about making that decision and choice to have faith, and certainly it's not something that we want to force. It has to be someone's conviction, has to be the work of the Holy Spirit in their life. But I want to redefine. I said the word decision. I know that sometimes can carry unhelpful connotations, but I think the word should be respond to the gospel, respond to the conviction of God. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that interview. It was very eye-opening for me, and to hear the perspective of where they're coming from and their beliefs. Obviously, Adam is not a believer in Jesus. He's a writer for Israel 365, and he is certainly involved with a lot of people that want to see that the third temple be rebuilt. So that was where he was coming from. But yeah, it'd just be amazing to see him come to faith. So thank you all for the Jay for the gift memberships, for giving so many people in the chat a membership. That's really, really kind, and the others who joined and supported it. For me, the reason I'm doing this, I have to make this clear. I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm not a pastor, obviously. I'm not a prophet. I'm none of those things. I'm just doing a radio show that is a Christian-focused radio show. As I say, I'm not a spiritual leader myself. I'm just here to talk about these issues and to hopefully shed some light on these things that are going on in the world. And just really myself, I'm no one special. I'm a failure. I need the gospel every day, and that's all I am. And I hope that by doing these events and live streams and radio shows, and I hope it will just bring people together. You make some friends, maybe meet people that are nearby, build a community together in these last days. Yeah, so that's the reason I'm doing it. And as I used to do some journalism in the media in 2010, and I'm just basically continuing that, but for a better purpose, which is to talk about the gospel and to talk about real things that really matter and what really goes on in our society and all the things that we're seeing in our day. So that interview will be on the YouTube channel at some point. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for those who are on Facebook. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to Run to Christ. Thank you to David. Thank you to Georgina, who is modding on Facebook. Son of God in the comments on YouTube says, who was the Christians raising the red heifer? I'm not sure. It was some kind of Christian group in Texas, apparently. That's what Adam said. He said that there's a Christian group who have raised a red heifer for the temple. And as I said to him, it's to me that seems strange. It's like a contradiction, because Jesus is the perfect final sacrifice and the fulfillment of the red heifer symbolism. So I don't quite understand why that would be necessary. Cindy, yes, I have just had a cup of tea as well. So welcome to all the new members. It's amazing to see all the members now. Just incredible. Thank you. It's so good, encouraging, especially as we have just started these weekly live shows. As I said, usually this will be from now on. This will be on Saturday. Saturday at 3 p.m. EST and 8 p.m. UK time. Today's Friday because I have an appointment tomorrow, so I can't make it on Saturday. But usually this will be on Saturdays, and then I think we may be doing just a kind of a fellowship evening on Sundays around the same time. Just that'll just be more people hanging out, I suppose. But yeah, it's quite a new endeavor we're doing. Claire Scott, welcome. Thanks for coming. Blue Ferry, I've started going to a Baptist church personally. It's just it's a loving environment. I think that's so important. Just if you can find somewhere that teaches the Bible and also has that element of just the love of Christ. I think that sometimes there can be issues with like some churches, of course, that are that don't show that, and I know some people have been quite damaged by bad church experiences, but there are still some out there. Yeah, in a moment we're going to just look briefly at something that Adam said. I think he was talking about the Antiochus Epiphanes, and I think we'll just have a quick look at what happened there with Antiochus Epiphanes and the desecration of the temple at that time, which is actually, many Christians believe, is one of the fulfillments of the abomination of desolation in the book of Daniel. The situation that happened with Antiochus Epiphanes, where he sacrificed a pig on the altar. He sacrificed a pig on the altar. And this happened before Christ came. Antiochus Epiphanes. Who has heard of Antiochus Epiphanes in the comments? Could you comment now? Have you heard of Antiochus Epiphanes? Chuck D. Truth says, yes, I have. Michael says, yes, I have. Humble Stranger, yes. Run to Christ, yes. Penny C. J, yes. Some haven't. Nana P says, a pig, a filthy animal at that. Yeah, unclean animal. A few people haven't, but seems most people have. Now, do you know what Epiphanes means? Do you know what his name means? Antiochus Epiphanes, which is, I believe, is a name he chose for himself. Do you know why he chose that name? Anyone? Anyone know why he chose that name? Penny C thinks he was the Antichrist, and I would definitely agree in terms of typology. My own view is that he was. Oh yeah, Antichrist is God manifest. Exactly. So that was his name, and yeah, as Penny said, certainly a typology of the Antichrist, God manifest, is his name, which is obviously a blasphemy. And then you've got the abomination of desolation. Definitely a candidate, a typology. As there's been many different typologies throughout history of this Antichrist figure. I mean, even the leader of Germany in 1930s, who I won't say the name of, but I mean, he did a false peace deal, right? And just like Haman in the Book of Esther, which they were doing a series on at church recently, Haman, same type of thing. He was persecuted the Jewish people. Same type of thing. It's just, you see it in different ones of these figures. Yeah, type, Penny, yeah, a type. Yeah, I agree. So we'll go to this briefly and have a look. I think it's interesting subjects. As Adam Berkowitz mentioned, this story is in the book of Maccabees, Second Maccabees, which is not in their canon, interestingly enough, and it's also not in our canon in the Bible for a good reason, because it's not inspired scripture. It details some history, but there's errors in the book of Maccabees in terms of like, look here, sections that include an endorsement of prayer for the dead. So that's not canon. Just to make that very, very clear, it's accepted in Catholicism and in the Apocrypha, etc. But which was in the early version of the King James, I believe, and the Geneva Bible. But it was made very clear, Second Maccabees in the Geneva Bible, that it was just included for points of interest. It is not inspired scripture. So if anyone's a young believer, I wouldn't recommend particularly reading things like this, but it's interesting for history. But just remember that it's not the Bible. It's not inspired. So it's got history in it. So that's how we're approaching this. But I think it's important to make that clear, because I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. E-Trust said Antiochus Epiphanes was a foreshadow of the Antichrist. Yeah. So second book of Maccabees is a deuterocanonical book which recounts the persecution of Jews under King Antiochus IV Epiphanes and the subsequent Maccabean revolt, which was a Jewish rebellion led by the Maccabees. And it concludes with the defeat of the Seleucid Empire general by Judas Maccabees, the leader of the Maccabees. Okay? And so this Maccabean revolt was a Jewish rebellion, as we said, from 167 to 160 BC. It was a conflict between the Maccabees' Hellenized Jews and the Seleucids continued until 134 BC, with the Maccabees eventually attaining independence. So King Antiochus Epiphanes launched a massive campaign of repression against the Jewish religion in 168. So this is what it details. So there was a revolt, a rebellion against this. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the king of Syria, captured Jerusalem in 167 BC and desecrated the temple by offering the sacrifice of a pig on an altar to Zeus, in brackets, the abomination of desolation. In seeking to prohibit Judaism and Hellenize the Jews, mix them with Greek paganism and all that kind of thing, Antiochus forbade their religious practices and commanded that copies of the law be burned, all of which is related by Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews. So what he did, and this is what we said, his name, the reason he chose that name is because Epiphanes means God manifest, which is just like another example or typology of that the Antichrist will claim to be God. So it's one of those types, one of those typologies in my view. So Epiphanes meaning God manifest or the glorious illustrious. So yes, it's blasphemous. Okay, so some people saying they didn't know that. Yeah, very interesting. And this is him, Antiochus Epiphanes. So he was a Greek Hellenistic king, 175 BC to 164 BC. So it was a couple of hundred years, just 164 years before Christ. He assumed the name Antiochus after he ascended the throne. His accession to the throne was controversial and he was seen as a usurper by some. And I think, I'm not sure if it was on here, but I think the Jews had a nickname for him, which we'll see if I think it's on one of these slides. And what he did was he sacrificed a pig on the altar in Jerusalem. The Greek king Antiochus IV Epiphanes, after the Greeks conquered Jerusalem, Antiochus had a statue of Zeus built in the second temple, possibly in the Kodesh HaKodashim, i.e. the Holy of Holies, the holy sanctuary chamber in the back, and he sacrificed a pig on the altar, and there's a picture of it there. I guess, you know, an unclean animal. There's the picture of the pig on the altar in the temple. So he desecrated it just like it says in the book of Daniel. Obviously placing a monument of a foreign god inside their temple and using its altar of incense to sacrifice an unclean animal was considered a terrible affront. But Antiochus did not stop there. He actively sought to impose Greek polytheism on the Jews and persecuted anyone who refused to assimilate into Greek culture, that forbidden mix of pagan culture. And then this is how they responded. A revolt. And that's the Maccabean revolt. Yehuda ha-Maccabee was a priest from the village of Modin and the third son of Mattiyahu Hashmonai. In English, we call him Judah Maccabee. He led the revolt against the Greeks, pushing them out of Jerusalem and eventually out of Israel altogether. Then he rededicated the temple by lighting the menorah inside. We commemorate these events every year on the 25th of Kislev. We call it Hanukkah. So that's the festival Hanukkah, and that's what the festival Hanukkah is representing, which is obviously still celebrated today. And then just as a reference here, Daniel 11:31, His armed forces shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. The abomination of desolation, or the abomination that causes desolation. And right there, as we said, is one of the fulfillments of that. Some people think it's the final one. I personally think it's a typology, and it's one of those fulfillments. But yeah, that's my opinion. But that's Daniel 11:31 describes it exactly. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. So this feast or festival of dedication in Jerusalem, which is Hanukkah, that's another name for Hanukkah. You see here, Hanukkah is called the Feast of Dedication because it celebrates the Maccabees' victory over Greek oppression and the rededication of the temple in Jerusalem. See, this is in John 10:22. Jesus is there in the temple, and it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication, and it was winter. And Jesus was walking in the temple courts in Solomon's colonnade. So Jesus was there in the temple at the festival of Hanukkah. Even though that's not documented in the Bible, but in the book of Maccabees. But yeah, as a historical event, as we said, Maccabees is not inspired, but it talks about that historical event. And Jesus was there at the festival of dedication, or Hanukkah, in Jerusalem, in the temple. So that's it's pretty interesting. And it says here, a miraculous event occurred during the rededication of the temple when God caused the eternal flame to burn for 8 days on 1 day's worth of oil. I'm not sure about the details of that, but that's what it says. Obviously, take everything, do your own research on that. But and Hanukkah this year is very soon. It's in 7 days. It's on the evening of Thursday, 7th of December, 2023, to Friday, the 15th of December, 2023. So this is a feast festival that they still celebrate today, and it's about this event that took place with Antiochus Epiphanes and the Maccabean revolt. So he was a great villain. That's a coin depicting him, and then on the right-hand side of this coin, it has the so-called goddess of victory, which is Nike. And that's, it says here, this is Bible History Daily. It says, many names come to mind when someone mentions the great villains of the Bible. Some are foreign powers like the Pharaoh of the Exodus or King Nebuchadnezzar, and some are native Israelites such as King Saul and King Ahab. The great villains in the era of the New Testament and the early church often took the form of great persecutors, King Herod the Great, Nero, Domitian. There is one that escapes the attention of biblical pop culture, and that is Antiochus Epiphanes. So, yeah, it's an interesting article on there. And it talks about here how Antiochus Epiphanes effectively stepped into the role of the little horn of Daniel's visions and became the apocalyptic supervillain archetype that remains within the psyche of the Christian belief system to this day. So, yeah, this Antichrist figure. And there's a lot of different figures that are part of that typology that we've seen, like Pharaoh and King Herod and all of those. But yeah, so that's him. And so I just wanted to draw your attention to him. I don't know what you think about that, but it's very interesting, isn't it? And so he took the epitaph Epiphanes, which means God manifest. Antiochus even claimed to be Zeus incarnate, and sort of brought in this paganism which caused the revolt in that area. And yeah. So what do you think about that? It's very interesting. Then you skip forward a few years, and there was another interesting thing that happened. I don't know if you, because Adam Berkowitz in that interview was talking about Simon Bar Kokhba and the Bar Kokhba revolt. Has anyone heard of the Bar Kokhba revolt? Anyone heard of the Bar Kokhba revolt? Simon Bar Kokhba? So this is an interesting one. Okay, sort of half and half. Some people have, some people haven't. Antichrist says 135 AD. Few people have, a few people haven't. This is interesting because, like Adam Berkowitz was saying in the interview, he was a false Messiah. And what's interesting is that the Pharisees and some of the Jews at the time, they were waiting for, they thought that the Messiah was going to come and lead them militarily. I don't know if you remember, Adam Berkowitz was talking somewhat about their view of Ben Yosef and Ben David. They think it's two different things, and we believe that Jesus fulfills both because he came first time as the suffering servant, and he returns the second time as the conquering king, and he will come back as that conquering king on the seat of David. But so as the Bible says, and it was clear at the time, they were waiting for this military leader to lead them in a revolution against the Romans. And so, but this figure actually came soon after 132, Simon Bar Kokhba, and he was claiming to be like a messianic figure, and he tried to lead this military revolution. And as even Adam said, that they believe he was a false Messiah because basically he failed. So they even see that he was a false Messiah. Now, the reason I've got this up on screen, Aelia Capitolina, I don't know if anyone here listening and watching is aware of Aelia Capitolina and how that land, Judea and Samaria and the land where Jesus walked, was renamed. At some point, it was renamed Syria Palestina. I'm not exactly what the exact point. I haven't done enough research on that, but I know it was changed at some point to. I know there's a few different theories on what time and why. But yeah, it was changed to Syria Palestina, and also Aelia Capitolina was the new name given by Emperor Hadrian, or during Emperor Hadrian's visit to Judea in 129 to 130 AD. And the area where Jerusalem is, he renamed to Aelia Capitolina. And so this was around 129, 130 AD. So about 100 years after Jesus. He changed the name, basically, of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina, the Roman Emperor Hadrian. So this was centered around Jerusalem, which had been almost totally razed to the ground after the siege of 70 AD, which obviously 70 AD, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, etc. And that was obviously prophesied by Jesus as well. But yeah, this was 130 AD. He renamed it to Aelia Capitolina, and he constructed the construction of a temple to Jupiter at the site of the former temple That's what happened in 130 AD. So he changed the name of Jerusalem and the Roman Emperor Hadrian, and they constructed a temple to Jupiter at the site of the former temple on the Temple Mount. So that's another interesting one, isn't it? Like a false pagan temple that was built on the Temple Mount. And this may have been one of the causes for the outbreak of the Bar Kokhba revolt in 132. So there was another revolt here. Now, this was a big revolt that happened around this time, led by this man called Simon Bar Kokhba. It was a large-scale armed rebellion initiated by the Jews of Judea, led by Simon Bar Kokhba against the Roman Empire in 132. It lasted until the year 136, so it's about 4 years, and it was the third and final escalation of the Jewish-Roman wars. So this was a big thing that happened. I don't know how many people died, but it was pretty bad. And so they reckon that might have happened as a result of the building of a temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. And so this is what happened, the Bar Kokhba revolt. Roman rule in Judea was not well received among the Jewish population, especially after the destruction of the Second Temple during the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD. The Romans also had a large military presence across the province, pushed unpopular changes in administrative and economic life, constructed the colony of Aelia Capitolina over the destroyed city of Jerusalem, and erected a place of worship for Jupiter on Jerusalem's Temple Mount, where the Jews' second temple had stood. Jupiter, also known as Jove, is the god of the sky and thunder and king of the gods in ancient Roman religion and mythology. Jupiter was the chief deity of the Roman state religion throughout the Republican and imperial eras until Christianity became the dominant religion. So here it says, look, the charismatic and messianic nature of Simon Bar Kokhba, which is this figure that led the military revolution against this happening, may have also been a factor in popularizing the uprising across all of Judea. So you can read about that, but that's what happened. So, and the result was a Roman victory. Here you go. The result of this revolution, this uprising, the Bar Kokhba uprising revolt, was a Roman victory. Then it says restructuring of Judea as Syria Palestina. There it is, Syria Palestina, and that's when the name of the land there changed to Syria Palestina, or Roman Palestine. Now, some people say it was changed on purpose by Emperor Hadrian to delegitimize the land, because Palestine was a word that derives from Philistine. Some people say that. I've heard Christian pastors say that Hadrian purposely renamed the land to Palestina, Syria Palestina, or Roman Palestine, to directly, as an affront, as an offense, when they kicked the Jewish people out to the diaspora across the world, intentionally. But I don't know if that's true. There's different. I've read historian types that have said they don't know where that idea came from. So I don't know if that's definitely true. But definitely the land was named to Syria Palestina at one point around this time. It says in here it was a Roman province in the Palestine region between the early 2nd and late 4th centuries. So at some point these names came about, and it's interesting how it all ties together, right? So yeah, the Bar Kokhba revolt, and this is Simon Bar Kokhba. He led the revolt around that 132 AD. There's a picture of him, or a painting of him. Simon Bar Kokhba on his horse with the distinctive shields. So he's a Jewish military leader in Judea. He is the namesake of Bar Kokhba revolt, which he initiated against the Roman Empire in 132. Though they were ultimately unsuccessful, Bar Kokhba and his rebels did manage to establish and maintain a Jewish state for about 3 years after beginning the rebellion. So Bar Kokhba served as the state's leader, crowning himself as Nazi, prince, biblical Hebrew, prince or president. Some of the rabbinic scholars in his time imagined him to be the long-expected Messiah of Jerusalem. And that's the thing, is that Jesus warned, and Paul warned about people coming in claiming to be that. And this happened 132 AD. Some of them believed he was the long-expected Messiah of Judaism, just like that they wrongly attributed that they thought Jesus was going to lead them militarily at that time against the Romans. They were mixing up that that's his second coming, that he comes as the conquering king. But that's it. They thought he was the Messiah. This guy came along and told them exactly what they wanted to hear. And some of them thought he was the long-expected Messiah. So it didn't go very well. And the result, the Judean rebels who remained after his death were all killed or enslaved within the next year, and their defeat was followed by a harsh crackdown on the Judean populace by the Roman Emperor Hadrian. So that's what happened. And this is somewhere you can visit. This is near to Bethlehem. This is Herodium. This was built by Herod, King Herod. And this is like some kind of fortress. It's an artificial hill. It's built by Herod. And what happened in that, if you go there today, you'll find this out. But during that Bar Kokhba revolt, yes, he was buried there. Chuck D. Truth, that's true. He was buried there. During that Bar Kokhba revolt we were talking about, is that in there today, you can go in there and there's all these tunnels dug all through this hill. And they were used by the rebels, the revolutionaries in the Bar Kokhba revolt. And they basically took hold of this as a fortress, and they used this in that rebellion, in that uprising. And you can go in there today and you just literally walking around all these different tunnels inside there. And that was used by those people involved, the Jewish people involved in the Bar Kokhba revolts. But this is near Bethlehem. This is in the West Bank. And you can still go there today. And when I was, because you can go and stand at the top and you get this amazing view when you stand at the top of this place. And you can see basically over the fields nearby where the shepherds would have walked to the Nativity when they were walking to Bethlehem. And you can see all these vast fields where these shepherds came. And it's an amazing sight. And there was a Christian tour guide on the top of this when I was standing up there, and he said, isn't it interesting that, you got the king of hate, the king of evil, Herod, and he's on here overlooking the birth of the king of love in Bethlehem. Very, very interesting. But yeah, so that's Herodium, and that was used by those rebels. So yeah, that's an interesting look at the Bar Kokhba revolt and the Maccabees, the Hanukkah, and all those things. But yeah, I just thought I would share that with you today. And then I won't go too much further, but you fast forward to Palestine in 1948, and it says here that, and this is the thing, is that the land has been occupied by so many different powers. As it says here, the land itself was under the control of various empires such as the Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, and eventually the Caliphate of the Ottoman Empire and the Ottoman Empire. And then, of course, it went to the British Mandate. And so all these different occupations have been governing the land throughout the years. And then really just skimming through it all, but the British Mandate was given this segment of land, which I believe it was Winston Churchill drew a line down the Jordan River. They gave this whole section on the right to Transjordan, to the Hussein family, and then they kept the left-hand side, which eventually in 1948 became Israel. So, but it's important to remember that, you know, that all these different occupations, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Caliphate, and the Ottoman Empire and the British, they're all different people or major powers governing the land. So I think it helps to know some of those things. And just to finish, that place that I showed you here, the Herodium that King Herod built, there was a very interesting discovery made in this place, and that was Pontius Pilate's ring. They found a ring in Herodium which confirmed Pontius Pilate, and there it is there. This was a few years ago, not very long ago, but yeah, this was a few years ago that they discovered this ring, which confirmed. Oh, it actually says here 1969. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was more recently, but yeah, they found this ring, and the Pilate stone. Yeah, so it says on the ring, Prefectus Judea, or Prefect of Judea, and they believe it was actually Pontius Pilate's ring. So yeah, that was found here in Herodium. Yeah, Zevi was in the 1666. Adam Berkowitz was talking about Zevi, Sabbatai Zevi, and they also believe that he was an Antichrist figure. They don't accept Zevi or the Sabbateans. 1666, ironically, but so yeah, I thought I would just show you some of that overview. If any of you found that interesting, Hanukkah, very interesting. That Jesus was walking in the temple during Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, and how that festival comes from that celebration of the Maccabean revolt and against Antiochus Epiphanes, who was a type of Antichrist, a fulfillment of the abomination of desolation, sacrificed to an unclean pig on the altar. And then, yeah, the Romans, 70 AD, destroyed Jerusalem, and how Emperor Hadrian renamed it, and you got Aelia Capitolina, and they built a temple of Jupiter on the Temple Mount. So yeah, Yeah, thank you for watching that. I just I thought you'd find that interesting. I bring up some sources on those parts of history and how it relates to everything. Hello, the Nut House. Welcome. Good to have you with us again. Chuck D Truth, no problem. Yeah, I thought it was worth sharing, really, because it's there's so much to it, isn't there? And I think it helps put some of these things in context. Nightbot is a false mod. Well, Nightbot's been, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Nightbot has been very rude. It wasn't set up to do that. It seems to have got a mind of its own, but we were just, it was supposed to just help people, help the situation, but it's not been a very good, not been very good. I'll have to sort it out, I think. To try and sort it out to make it a bit better, but yeah. So we've got the duck. If anything needs sorting out, just put the duck on there. And hello, Lee Friend in South Africa. Thanks for joining us. Amazing to have you with us from South Africa. Yeah, I mean, John, it should be interesting in 2024 to see what happens. So we'll go for another 15 minutes or so. I don't think we're doing too bad considering the technology. I mean, this stuff is really complicated, and thanks to Run to Christ has helped. Thanks again to the mods tonight. Thanks to David. Thanks to Run to Christ. Thanks to Georgina on Facebook. Thank you everyone who has been watching on Facebook. Appreciate it. Please if you're on Facebook still, please go over to Facebook and like the Rise page. Thank you, Mash. Appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's not an easy job modding these because, as we said before, you don't want to be over modding or under modding to keep the atmosphere, the chat good. So it's not easy, but so I appreciate your help. Well, that's the big question. There's different beliefs on the abomination of desolation, and my opinion is that there can be multiple fulfillments. That's my opinion. Some people don't think that, but my opinion is that there's a lot of typologies. What's your opinion? I know some people believe that there is one to come still, and I'm of that view too, but Cindy Temple, yep. Put the kettle on. Super cartoonist. Yeah, good to see you. Maybe next time. You missed it, but yeah, maybe next time. we may be doing a live thing tomorrow, just as like a gathering. Hopefully tomorrow. That was really good conversation with Adam tonight, right? Anyone that heard it, please do keep to pray for him, because yeah, it would be so great if he came to faith. Yeah, but the thing is, you gotta really meet people where they're at, right? Because they're taught not to connect things to Jesus. I mean, some people are taught not to read the New Testament, but Adam said he studied the New Testament, so he's at least done that. Obviously, he's not there yet, but I think some of the things he says is pretty interesting, because it's encouraging, at least. I really think you could sit down for hours and have good conversation with him. It's just nice he's able to talk about it and contemplate it, you know. eTrust says, that's terrible news. I'm so sorry to hear that. eTrust says that a friend of theirs, she just witnessed someone passing away in that terrible manner. I'm sorry about that. So if anyone wants to pray for eTrust's friend. Thank you, Jay, for coming and for all your support of the stream and the channel and the broadcast. It's really, thanks. That's really helpful. I appreciate it very much. As I said before, I'm just here hosting a radio show. I'm not a spiritual leader myself. I'm just here to talk about what goes on and the gospel and interviews and bringing people together. I'm a broken sinner myself, redeemed by Jesus. I need the gospel every day. I fail, and so I thank you for coming and joining us and being part of the stream. Yes, Lisa Rini says he breaks every chain. That's very true. You know, the more I go on, the more I realise how much I need the gospel, how corrupt my heart is, how easily I'm led astray by and temptations that come in, you know. I'm absolutely desperately in need for Christ. Absolutely. And I was thinking the other day about the Pharisee and the tax collector, how the tax collector was one of the most the scorned people in society, and he couldn't look up. He just beat his chest and said, "Lord, forgive me, I'm a sinner." While the Pharisee looked up proudly, and it's just amazing, isn't it? That we just have to confess that we are lost without him and can't do it ourselves. We're just so lost in sin, and we just need the Messiah. That's all we can cry out. Lord, forgive me, I'm a sinner. And that really speaks to me anyway. There's nothing I can do except trust in him for his forgiveness. And those who are forgiven much love much. And I can say that I've been forgiven a lot. So yeah, we're going to finish in 3 minutes. Monty, thanks for joining us. Sorry you missed it, but yeah, it's 3 p.m. EST every Saturday from now on, and probably a little meet up tomorrow around the same time. Next week we'll do a call-in. We have that phone number, so we'll do a call-in next week. I know we didn't get round to it today, but we'll make it more of a regular thing to do the phone-ins so people can chat on here. But yeah, we'll do that next week. Okay, it's 6 p.m. in the Eastern Standard Time, and it's 11 p.m. here in the UK. That is the time we're going to finish. So, as I say, we'll probably be on tomorrow around 3 p.m. EST-ish, a bit later, around then, just for a time of fellowship and that, just chilling out, hanging out. These streams will be every Saturday at 3 p.m. EST. Every Saturday. So come and join us every Saturday, please. You know, guys, it's you that make it what it is. And I really appreciate you being with us. So if you're around on Saturdays, 3 p.m. EST, 8 p.m. UK time. This is just, as I said, this is just a radio show. This is just that's all this is. It's not a prophecy meeting. It's not a pastoral. It's not anything like that. It's just a hangout, a radio show, latest news and events and interviews. Thank you all for coming and for really respectful chat tonight on there. It was pretty good. Thanks for the mods. Thanks for modding for us on Facebook and YouTube. The interview with Adam Berkowitz will be on YouTube soon as well. So if you want to listen to that again, then please do. Thanks for watching. God bless.